The bond index in that period, since we bought Bitcoin, is down 18%. So if you were 10 to 1 levered and you put all your assets into bonds, then you're bankrupt. That's why the banks are bankrupt, because they were any bank that was 10 to 1 levered, that put the majority of their assets into mid-dated bonds or long-dated bonds, is technically insolvent. The irony, by the way, is if they'd all bought Bitcoin, they actually wouldn't be insolvent. But of course, you can't buy Bitcoin if you're a regulated bank.
Is Bitcoin about to explode in price like never before? According to Michael Saylor, the biggest Bitcoin bull out there, all the stars are aligning for an epic rally. Political support is growing, infrastructure is coming, and that means a tsunami of capital will surge into Bitcoin's limited supply. Saylor believes the time for Bitcoin to make its biggest gains ever is nearly here. Don't miss what he has to say about why 2024 will be a historic year for the top crypto.
Bitcoin is digital property. It's conveyed by digital power. Those Bitcoin miners are digital power providers, and it's the most powerful computer network in the world.
Saylor has full conviction that Bitcoin was made for this century. Nothing can match its 21 million fixed supply scarcity. Not only that, but its returns blow traditional assets like gold out of the water, even during so-called bear markets. When you combine its limited coins with that dominance, it's no wonder Saylor is so bullish on Bitcoin becoming the undisputed store of value for generations as it cements its place above all others. This guy clearly did his research. Is he onto something huge here? Stick around to find out.
So the epiphany of 2020 was the only path forward. There's two paths forward. Either I have to impoverish the company by loading it up with debt, and we're going to eventually trip and die. And that's why the mortality rate in all these LBOs is 99%. They all go bankrupt and they're torn to pieces. And it's bad for the employees, bad for the customers, bad for the shareholders. Or the other possibility is I have to convert my treasury into an asset that cannot be debased by the government. I have to have tangible assets. So if you have 500 million, are you going to buy 500 million of buildings or oil rights or timber or coal or soybeans or gold or Bitcoin? And I looked and I said, well, I can't find 500 million worth of art to buy. Art's a store of value, sort of inflation hedge. If you held it for 100 years, it's worth more today than it was 100 years ago. You can't say the same for the dollar. So I can't find art to buy. I can't, do I buy land? I can't find a portfolio of 500 million worth of commercial real estate to buy. It was all overvalued. Can you buy the S&P index? No. The problem with the corporation is accounting rules and law requires that no more than 40% of your balance sheet be invested in securities. There happens to be a carve-out to hold treasuries. Although treasuries are technically securities, they're deemed as property or commodities in the accounting profession for that purpose. But I just couldn't go buy the index. And if I did buy the index, the problem with that is the typical investor would say, why did you buy the S&P index when I could buy the S&P index? So you're not really adding value to an investor. So the question is, what is the most valuable king commodity that you can buy that's property and not a security, that actually adds value to an investor, that can reasonably be expected to appreciate in time as the dollar is debased? And that got me looking for either gold, like gold is sound money for 5,000 years, or Bitcoin. And I concluded that crypto gold was better than gold. If I could create a gold network with 21 million gold coins, if I could make it illegal to mine any more gold, if I could make it possible to teleport the gold, if I could make it possible to program the gold at 1 million cycles a second, that'll be better than gold. So I thought, well, I guess theoretically we could create that. And what happened in the crypto world is they created a form of crypto gold, a pharmaceutical-grade synthetic gold, but it's faster, smarter, stronger than gold. All of the advantages of gold, a bearer instrument with no counterparty risk that's a non-sovereign store of value. Those are the advantages. None of the disadvantages of gold. It's expensive to move, it's centralizing, people can steal it from you, and gold miners keep debasing it by making more gold. So once we saw that, we said, okay, crypto gold looks better than soybeans, looks better than real estate, looks better than gold. What's crypto gold? Is it Bitcoin or is it some other crypto asset? And after studying all 10,000 of the crypto assets, you could start with the top 100. You concluded Bitcoin's the most decentralized. Bitcoin didn't have an ICO. Bitcoin didn't have a pre-mine. Bitcoin isn't controlled by a corporation. Bitcoin isn't controlled by the core devs. It isn't controlled by the Bitcoin Foundation. They fought a civil war over the future of it. People that wanted to corrupt it or change it lost the civil war. You got a winner. And so the provenance of Bitcoin indicated that it is, and truthfully, the digital synthetic successor to gold. And then the conclusion is, well, if Bitcoin works, then gold won't. Because every intelligent person with money has to choose one or the other. And so if they choose Bitcoin, Bitcoin is going to appreciate at a faster rate. Gold is going to fail. Eventually, people will sell all their gold. They'll buy Bitcoin. And not only will you not be successful holding gold, you'll lose all your money to buy gold.
So back in 2020, Saylor had a major wake-up call where he realized that cash was literally trash. As companies and countries printed endless money, the value of cash stockpiles was melting away. That's when the light bulb went off over Saylor's head. So MicroStrategy made the bold decision to convert their multi-billion-dollar cash reserves into the king of all non-sovereign money. Talk about having a vision. Saylor saw the writing on the wall for cash way before many others. And as we all know, that epic bet has paid off tremendously for his company. But the timing of that epiphany shows just how smart this guy really is. Are you listening to what else he's predicting?
And to put this in perspective, MicroStrategy had a $600 million enterprise value in the summer of 2020, and today it has a $6.6 billion enterprise value. So the enterprise value increased by a factor of 10, our market cap increased by a factor of 4, and we went from having a $500 million dead money asset, a liability on our balance sheet called the US dollar, that was always going to yield less than the inflation rate, to $4 billion plus of a digital asset, which is appreciating 50% a year for the past 3 years. So we transformed our company. In essence, you could call it a digital REIT of sort. Like, we basically backed it with billions and billions of dollars of a digital scarcity. And instead of having to basically give all $500 million back to the shareholders in a buyback, or do an LBO where we decapitalize the company where we had no assets, we flipped it such that today we have billions and billions of dollars of assets, and we're the best capitalized we've ever been and financially the strongest.
Saylor transformed MicroStrategy's entire balance sheet from depreciating cash to $4 billion plus in appreciating Bitcoin.
MicroStrategy is the first company to do a Dutch auction or a share repurchase to buy Bitcoin. We're the first company to do a convertible debt offering to buy Bitcoin. Last week, we became the first company to do a senior secured debt offering to buy Bitcoin. And we put in place this $1 billion at-the-market shelf registration so that we'd have a standing program to be able to go back to the capital markets to issue equity in the future should the circumstances present themselves.
The results? Staggering returns that increased MicroStrategy's market cap by over 10x. By boldly switching to the top crypto during its rise, Saylor has proven his financial genius and created incredible wealth for shareholders. He clearly sees even greater gains ahead. Is the CEO onto something massive once more?
If we just wait for all the fiat currencies of the world to inflate as the world issues more dollars, pesos, bolivars, and euros, and yen, and yuan, it stands to reason that the price of Bitcoin measured in those units of account is just going to continue to appreciate to our benefit, the benefit of our shareholders.
Again, you give me so many bits to focus on in one answer, but let's focus on this tremendous conviction that you have. Is there any scenario, is there any development that could derail your thesis? I'm sure you did a very thorough analysis when deciding to go into Bitcoin as strongly as you have. Was there any scenario that you plotted out that said, if that were to develop, if that were to be revealed as true, if this were to happen, if this were to change, it derails your thesis?
You know, we scoured all of the property assets, art property, commercial real estate property, every form of property, and then we scoured all the commodities, and we considered every form of commodity from gold to silver to soybeans to oil to natural gas. And then we considered all the crypto assets. And at the end of the day, we concluded that Bitcoin was the best. And we made our decision. We've been executing the strategy. Since then, we've spent thousands of hours studying every development in the crypto ecosystem, every development in the Bitcoin ecosystem, all the macroeconomic, all the political, all the regulatory moves. My conviction today and my comfort and confidence today is stronger than it was in August of 2020. It's gotten progressively stronger each year. And so I don't see anything that's a threat on the horizon at this point. But let me be clear with one other point, which is we're a publicly traded company, and our job is to execute a business strategy with transparency and integrity.
Yeah.
There are publicly traded companies that invest in oil fields, and there are other companies that invest in timber rights, and there are other companies that invest in commercial real estate. If you're an investor and you want timber exposure, you want the company that's investing in timber rights to do that thing. And if you hate timber and you want to short it, you're going to short that company's stock. And if you love timber, you're going to go long the stock. So MicroStrategy represents Bitcoin to a public company investor. And for people that are skeptical of Bitcoin, that have any number of fears, they think Dr. Evil will invent a quantum computer and hack Bitcoin, they will just short us. And our job is actually to be long Bitcoin so they can short us. And for companies that think that's silly and Bitcoin's going to the moon, they'll go long.
While Fudsters love doomsday stories, Saylor isn't phased. He's hashed out every risk and scenario through extensive due diligence. After stress testing it all, he simply can't envision anything stopping Bitcoin in the long run. You've got to respect that level of conviction, especially from a CEO putting billions behind BTC. It's clear Saylor leaves no stone unturned in his analysis. Could his unshakable bullishness mean the biggest gains are still ahead of us?
My question is, at what rate is the currency expanding versus scarce, desirable assets? And if the cost of something scarce and desirable is going up 20% a year, the inflation rate is 20%. But CPI normally measures not scarce assets. It normally measures the cost of generating boxed cereal or the cost of a cheap cookie cutter apartment created with plywood, plaster, board, stamped out in 18,000 quantities. So I don't think the inflation rate is the CPI. I think right now the CPI is higher than the interest rate. So we do have a problem where on any basis your money is a negative real yield. But if I had to estimate, I would say the real inflation rate, the monetary inflation rate, is 10 to 15% a year in the dollar. The CPI inflation rate in Argentina is something like 105%, but that just means that the true inflation rate against scarce desirable assets must be 150%. So I think that everywhere in the world, you're looking at monetary inflation 10 to 15% right now because everything's pegged to the dollar. The strongest currencies don't do any better than the dollar. And so I think your choices, you've either got something in the low teens as your inflation rate, or you've got a weaker currency and there your inflation rate is in the 20s, or you've got a weaker currency and your inflation rate is in the 40s, 50s, all the way up to 100 plus.
While governments downplay inflation, Saylor estimates the real annual global rate is much higher, around 10 to 15% once all currency expansion is accounted for. That means prices are rising faster than we think. Meanwhile, even in down markets, Bitcoin has appreciated over 20% per year on average. No wonder Saylor was eager to find an asset outpacing worldwide monetary debasement. Could BTC just be getting started in its dominance?
I think the fact that Larry Fink, running the world's largest asset manager, vocalized all those ideas on public television of late was a milestone for the space. I think the second milestone for the space is the groundswell of positive sentiment for Bitcoin both in the form of overall crypto positivity and Bitcoin positivity. The statements by Ron DeSantis emphatically supporting your right to Bitcoin, the statements by Robert F. Kennedy emphatically supporting your right to Bitcoin, the disclosure that Kennedy actually purchased a bunch of Bitcoin for his children publicly is a big step forward. I think the fact you have two other presidential candidates, Mayor Suarez and Ramaswamy, also announcing support for Bitcoin, I think those are really big deals. So that combined with the regulators endorsing it, the CFTC and the SEC, combined with the tone and treatment of mainstream media. If we look at the treatment of Bitcoin in the mainstream media, both across CNBC, Fox, Bloomberg, the Wall Street Journal, the Times, and the like, I think you could see a market rotation of sentiment over the past 2 years, from one of incredulity and suspicion and fear and concern to respect, either a grudging respect or this, or I guess this thing is more than we thought it was.
Saylor's Bitcoin conviction continues deepening as more political and institutional players get involved. Growing support comes alongside generally more positive press and maturing infrastructure, like simple exchanges and custodial services removing adoption barriers. Each new tailwind fuels his belief that the best is yet to come.
Of the retail public and the ability of institutions and governments is still largely impaired to act on that. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult for a retiree with a pension fund to make an investment in Bitcoin. It's very difficult for a large corporation to invest in Bitcoin. It's difficult for a sovereign wealth fund. It's difficult for a government. It's difficult for a hedge fund. So you have all these challenges to action. You have all of these solutions in play. It's really just a matter of which quarter, how many quarters does it take before we put all the solutions in play. When the rails go, we have a large pool of capital that would love to be in the space, but they can't easily do it without things like Bitcoin securities or spot ETFs. And so that's going to be a big catalyst for demand. And we already know it's coming, and it hasn't come, which means it has not reflected itself fully in the price.
Halving events continue capping mining at thinner issuance too. And with so much buying pressure and fewer new coins, Saylor expects jaw-dropping prices will result from this supply and demand dynamic alone. An ETF could single-handedly catapult Bitcoin beyond any current dreams of its potential. No wonder its impending arrival has the CEO salivating over the possibilities it unlocks. As political, institutional, and public support grows to match surging infrastructure, the final pieces are falling into place for an unprecedented adoption surge. With so many converging factors beyond any single company's control, I'd expect Saylor to stay as bullish as ever on Bitcoin's long-term potential for seismic impact and wealth generation. The biggest gains may still be right ahead. If you found this breakdown of Saylor's views insightful, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more in-depth cryptocurrency analysis. We'll keep you updated on all the latest developments and perspectives from major players like Saylor. To take the discussion further, join our Telegram group linked in the description. Our community loves to debate trends like these and hear different viewpoints. Become a part of the conversation on Bitcoin's path forward as these powerful macro forces unfold. Thanks for watching.